Awesome. Welcome back to Free Game Productions. We have a very special episode, my 37th birthday. Thank you. And my buddy from high school, middle school, played lacrosse together. Naturally enough, I just saw the picture of our high school senior lacrosse pictures. My buddy Steve Bond, he is the executive producer for Bussin With The Boys. Did I get that correct?
That's right.
Then won an Emmy in 2018 for his behind the camera work. And what's really cool to see is Steve knew he wanted to do this in like 10th grade.
Which is crazy, right? First of all, happy birthday. I completely forgot that it was your birthday, so happy birthday.
Thank you.
Apparently I don't check Facebook enough to
Dude,
keep track of all that stuff. But literally I remember 10th. It might have been even earlier than that. I thought ESPN was the route. Like I thought, Chris Berman, Al Michaels, all those guys.
What a legend Berman was.
Oh, yeah, it still is. Still
Right.
is.
So, do you think there'll ever be another Berman?
No, because it was the perfect time and the perfect place, and ESPN became this behemoth, and he was in every home in the country, whether you wanted him or not. Now, the way content is, you have to seek people out. So it's much different.
Right. So that kind of leads us into beautiful question is, who's your Mount Rushmore of people in the media or people you've worked with?
So
Actually, people you worked with.
Yeah, let's do people I've worked with then. Okay. This is a very difficult list, and it's weird for me to even say this as like a humble brag because I hate to go down that route. I don't typically do podcasts. I'm more behind the scenes now.
Well, thank you.
So it's not. I appreciate the invitation, my man.
Yeah.
This is a tremendous honor. I would say the top two are Mike Pereira and Dean Blandino, two guys that I worked with at Fox who started everything for me. I started producing their digital show in 2020, I think. Yeah, it was 2020, before the pandemic hit. And they have been incredible to me. I still can call and text these guys to this day. They'll pick up the phone for whatever reason. They still like me. I don't know why.
Nice.
But yeah, those two really started my kind of rebirth and re-career. And it led me to DraftKings, and it led me to eventually this job with Bussin With The Boys. And I think the next two would have to be Will Compton and Taylor Luan to round out my Mount Rushmore. And it's difficult because I've worked with some great names, and Brent Musburger's one, and Michael Lombardi's another. So like there are guys that are unfortunately left off that probably shouldn't be.
That's so cool that you've worked with legends like that. So your first gig on the who was your first one with? It was in Syracuse. I remember you had a podcast. I remember we were talking about I was going to be like a boxing analyst.
Yeah, which was wild, right?
I was boxing at the time.
Yeah, you were boxing at the time. So I had, I for like 6-7 years, I was a local sports guy, right? And I did the regional thing here in upstate New York, basically north of the Tappan Zee Bridge. I was on air for like high school stuff for Syracuse University. Whatever they needed, I was just talent for, basically. And at that same time, what I had realized, the reason I had left local was I saw what was happening in the digital space, and that it was clear as day what had happened to radio and newspapers before them. And I could see what was going to happen to local TV, and I realized I got to get out of this. This is not going to be around very long. It's going to evolve. They don't know it's going to evolve, so that means that they don't know where this thing's going. And I don't want to be on a ship in the middle of the ocean without any direction. So I sort of took
a blessing that you didn't get your career started yet. You were just getting started.
And I've had to kind of reinvent myself along the way because, like I said, I thought Chris Berman, I thought Al Michaels, I thought that was the path. And what I realized was my leadership ability and capability, and really the desire to be a leader, was not going to come to fruition if I was behind the camera, because you've got to take direction. Someone else is constantly your boss. You just kind of show up, do what you do, and then leave. And that's the beauty of it. If you like that, there's a beautiful thing in having the ability to show up, jump in front of a mic, jump in front of a camera, and then leave when that stuff is done, right? It's just that wasn't fulfilling for me. I realized I needed something more. And so getting behind the scenes, getting behind the camera sort of kickstarted this whole career. And you know, I bugged Fox Sports enough to the point where a VP of talent acquisition called me and said, "What do you want to do?" "I want to be on the digital team," was my response. And he said, "Great. Do you want to be in New York or LA?" And I had no preference. He said, "How does LA sound? That's where the digital team is based." "Perfect. Let's go to LA. Have you ever been?" I said yes. That was a complete lie. I had never been to LA, and I just didn't want to freak them out because I'm an upstate New York kid, right? Like, this is the complete opposite of Los Angeles. So I didn't want to freak them out. It was like, yes, I had been there. It's fine. I can do whatever, and just sort of reassured them that I could do this enough to where I got there. And then it was, you know, put your nose to the grindstone. We come from an upstate, you know, New York blue collar town. That's what, even if you didn't grow up blue collar laying bricks or whatever it was, there's still that mentality here.
Everybody here is a worker.
Everybody is, and everyone knows a work ethic, right? You have to, because it's crazy hours in the winter of, you know, shoveling snow before you go to school, before you go to work, whatever it may be. You come home and you kind of have to do the same thing, and then it's just rinse and repeat day after day. There's a grind to living in adverse conditions that you're just not going to get in LA. You're not going to get it in Florida, right? It's just not the same breed of cat that'll work in these different places and live there. So we have that sort of mentality, and that's what I brought to Fox Sports, and it was vastly different than the people that were there. And so I think that helped me stand out.
Okay. So how long were you in LA for, and what years? What did you do in LA, actually?
So in LA, I was a digital producer at Fox Sports. And I started in literally January 2nd, 2018 was my first day. And it was like the national championship for college football. That was my first day of work at Fox Sports. So
you walked right into that, got an Emmy your first year in LA.
Yeah, I mean, that summer, we started, that summer we had the World Cup, the rights to the World Cup. And I wasn't part of the crew because I was so new. I wasn't part of the crew that was sent to Russia. It was a very small crew. It's Russia. It is what it is.
Yeah.
It was a very small crew that was sent. And one, because the TV crew was massive. So the TV side is always going to have all the rights. They're going to get the preferential treatment for now. That's the way it is. The digital team had a smaller presence, but there was a team of us back in Los Angeles constantly churning out content. And so, I mean, listen, was I a major player? No. And I'm not, I'll always say that, listen, I was a backup quarterback that won a Super Bowl, right? The Emmy's still the same. The ring is still there. Like, I would much prefer to have one that I lead, right? And that's just the mentality. Like, I think everyone would rather just be the starting quarterback. But, I mean, listen, I don't carry it with me. It sits in my mom's house. It's with her. She helped me get to that place, so it's only right that it stays with her. I don't, someday I'll pass it down to kids if we get that far.
Yeah.
So far, I've been shooting blanks, but it is what it is, right? So, it's a tremendous honor to have that, right? Like it's a conversation piece. It's a nice thing to toss on the top of a resume.
I was gonna say, it's a resume. I'm sure that helps.
It definitely does, right? Like it gets you in. A buddy of mine, when I won it, I didn't buy it at first. If you're not an executive, you have to purchase these things. It's how it goes. And I wasn't going to purchase it.
So you have to buy your Emmy that you won.
I have to buy an Emmy. Yeah, it's how they make money. It's part of how they make money. So
wow,
it's not a bad deal, honestly. When I look back on it, it's like $500, and it's like
But now you have an Emmy that you won.
That you've got it, right? Like it's now you've got it. But I didn't want it because I felt like a backup quarterback, and that it drove me up a wall. And a buddy of mine said, "Listen, it's not a thing to brag about. It's an investment. You buy it, you put it on your LinkedIn, and suddenly you're now qualified for jobs that are $10,000 more than you thought you could make, or $20,000 or whatever it
100%.
is." It didn't end up working out like that for me immediately, but it definitely helped get me in the door, right? You are suddenly looked at with a little different respect than if you didn't have one. And listen, there are a ton of really good content creators, a lot of smart people that have never won one.
Have you heard the Kobe Bryant thing? He was coaching his girls' basketball team. I don't remember what grade, and they win like 4th place or something like that, right? And the girls don't want to get the trophy.
Yeah.
And Kobe goes, "Get the fucking trophy."
Yeah.
and hang it wherever you're going to see it every day and have that motivate you.
Yeah.
So you get a first place trophy. That's kind of what that sounds
It's the
like.
mentality, right? Like I think about it and I go, okay, I was a cog in the greater system there, and that's a really cool thing because I contributed something. Whatever it was, I contributed something that got us to this place. It wasn't a huge piece, right? Like I know the folks that were over in Russia grinding out the daily content there, they were a massive piece and a massive reason why we got that. But what it does is, to your point, it motivates you. And listen, either one way or the other. You're either going to look at it and go, man, I was really proud of that 4th place trophy, and that's great, and that's your mentality. Or you're going to look at it and go, I wish it was a 1st place.
Right.
It depends on your perspective and how you want to view things.
Right. And also, I imagine it allows you to see what an Emmy award-winning team operates like.
100%.
Like in business, it's super important. Like people that want to start a business, I usually suggest like work somewhere else for somebody that's super successful who cares about the pay, but see how they operate.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, okay, cool. So when I run my own thing, I'll take 7 of the 10 things that they do, and then you incorporate your other 3.
I take things from Fox Sports to this day, right? And I left there after 4 years. It was a great run. I'm really appreciative of the time that I had there. But there are pieces that I'll take that are a chip on my shoulder, and there are pieces that I'll take that I'll implement in other places, and they're things that I've implemented in the places I've worked since in DraftKings and Bussin. So, yeah, I didn't advance at Fox, and it's due to a number of different reasons, right? Like I didn't have a background at ESPN. I didn't come from, NFL Network or Bleacher Report or any of these great organizations. But it was a starter for me, and it got me in the door at a place like DraftKings, right? If I didn't have Fox Sports on my resume, if I hadn't produced guys like Mike Pereira and Dean Blandino, I don't get the opportunity to go produce Brent Musburger and Michael Lombardi, right? Like these are established guys. Brent's a legend. Michael is incredible. I don't get those opportunities without the Fox Sports thing. So you take it in the bubble that it is. It was a hard 4 years. I had to cut my teeth there. But I did it. I got the hardware. I got the experience with network talent. I was able to make great friends with 2 guys in Mike and Dean that I'll take with me for the rest of my life. And, I'm very grateful for that.
So tell me what it was like working with Brent Musburger and DraftKings and the whole gambling program. That has to be such a different...
So...
Side note, hopefully you're getting an Adam Sandler movie.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, man, that would be funny, right? So Brent is an absolute legend. I had worked with Michael for like a year when Brent decided he was done with the Raiders. He had done the play-by-play thing with the Raiders for a year or 2, I want to say, and was ready to be done with it. I think the Raiders wanted to go in a different direction.
What year was this?
Boy, this was 2021.
He's got to be in the College Football Hall of Fame, right?
He might be. I don't know. That's a really good question. I never asked him. So Brent started, and the way Brent got going was he was a newspaper guy in Chicago, and then worked his way up to eventually get to CBS. NFL Today was the first NFL pregame show. He was the host of it, right?
Okay.
This was Jimmy the Greek, all those guys right? Okay. So
yeah.
that great 30 for 30 shows you the window into that whole relationship. But Brent was the top guy, right? And the phrase "you are looking live" harkens back to gamblers, right? And so Brent would have his guys in Vegas and my guys in the desert, as he would often say. People wanted to know why they couldn't do live shots of certain things, or why they couldn't do a weather report, or why they couldn't, right? And so Brent got to thinking, okay, what we need then is a live shot from the stadium, and I can tell gamblers what the weather is without having to do a weather report, because they simply didn't have time. It was like a half an hour show. They've got to get to all these games. It's a tight window. It's not like a podcast form where you've got, however long the conversation goes is what you have. He had a certain amount of time, and so what he did is he went to the producers and said, let's get a live shot from the stadium. We don't need a weather report at that point because it's showing you what the weather is, and I can just say, you are looking live. And that's where the phrase comes from, which is incredible. So he's nuts, right? Like Brent's sharp as a tack to this day. He's in his 80s. Sharp as a tack, still gambling, constantly working lines, figuring out the angles.
Is that legal?
Yeah. So he bounces between, I don't know if it's legal in Montana, but I know it's legal in Las Vegas, and he has a place in Las Vegas.
There's not many sports in Montana.
No, yeah, there's not much there, right? You're just up there for fishing and hunting and
Yeah, it's
recreation.
beautiful. We were just there, but
I would love to go one day. I've yet to be. So Brent in Vegas, it's been legal for decades, right? Like it's the first guy to bring sports betting. It's based on the movie Casino. Sam Ace Rothstein, so it's Frank Lefty Rosenthal, put the first sports book in a casino on the Strip.
It's one of my favorite movies.
It was a Stardust, right? So that's what that movie is.
We're gonna watch that.
Yeah.
She was asking me about all these 90s movies.
It's an incredible movie, and it's really based on there's a ton of truth there, right? And so
who's Joe Pesci?
Joe Pesci is the ant, Anthony Spilatro.
No shit.
And he was, again, a short guy, an enforcer, the whole nine. I mean, it's very, very true, which is awesome. But yeah, Frank Lefty Rosenthal was a sports handicapper in Chicago. The mob bosses gave him this, casino to run because they saw the way he operated and how much money he was bringing in. He basically took the Stardust from nothing to one of the top casinos on the Strip, and one of the things he brought was sports betting. He created the first sports book, and it's been, a popular thing in Las Vegas ever since.
When was that? Like the 70s?
Yeah.
70s, like Jimmy the Greek, Brett Musburger. So that's awesome to know.
It's wild.
That the announcers are gambling on the games.
And not all of them are, but a lot of them know it. Like Al Michaels, you can...
Dude, I would for sure guess Al Michaels.
Yeah, I mean, because you can hear, like, in some of his calls, like, when it's late and it's a blowout, but it's within 14, and he goes, well, that's important to some, right?
Yeah.
That some are gamblers. And the NFL knows that this stuff is happening.
Because it keeps the ratings.
Because that's why people, I mean, it's all about watch time, right? Like, we're concerned about it as podcasters and content creators. We want you to listen for a very long time because then we can get in more advertisements. It's no different with television. The longer you're watching those games, the more ads you're seeing, the more sponsorships you're seeing. That's better for the league. It's better for everybody, right? So, yeah, I mean, Brent still to this day is, when I produced him in 2022, I'm losing track of the years, 2022.
So you actually got to know him though?
Got to know him, text with him.
That's so cool.
It was wild, right? Like so what he would do is when he decided to make his return, he had started this gambling network called the Vegas Stats and Information Network. And he brought a bunch of Fox Sports guys with him. This was in 2017, before the bill passed in 2018, PASPA. I'm going to butcher that. But it essentially created the rights for these states to go out and legalize sports betting. He had this network ready to go, and they were already talking lines and spreads and totals and teasers and parlays and, props and all the rest of this stuff. They had been doing it for a year, and he did it for a number of years. The Raiders called. He wanted to do the play-by-play thing again, get back in the NFL, did that.
Was that when the Raiders went to Vegas?
That's when the Raiders, they were in Oakland for 1 year, then they moved to Vegas, so naturally get Mr. Vegas, right?
That makes sense.
He did it for the year in Vegas, and then comes back to VSiN. And at VSiN, he was a Monday through Friday show, right? Like, he had to have the main drive time show was his thing. He has never gone back to Sunday morning pregame until he came back to VSiN, and I produced him doing Sunday pregame stuff. So we were literally the pregame show for the NFL, and it was, Brent Musburger every Sunday saying, "You are looking live," and it was the odds board in, Circus Sports in downtown Las Vegas.
So somebody like you who loves the history of this.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I had a dream job there, right? Like, I had an absolute dream gig there. It was awesome. I'm producing I had the most important time slot on the network, Sunday morning before the NFL kicks off. And I literally had Michael Lombardi for 2 hours, and then for that third hour, I had Brent Musburger.
That's so cool. So, have you ever read The Alchemist?
I have not. I'm reading textbooks now, Luke. So I don't have time to read for pleasure anymore, because I've now had a bunch of people give me books to read, and after 3 years is up, I will read them. But I have another 3 years to go before I graduate, because I'm going very slow.
If you have time, I know you obviously have to listen to podcasts and stuff. There's a free YouTube of it.
Okay.
Or audiobook, and Jeremy Irons narrates it.
Okay.
I listen to that once a year and other books once a year, but that one in particular, in it, and the concept of it is like chasing your dreams.
Yeah.
Like you have no idea where the journey will lead you, but that's how you get your treasure.
Yeah.
And it's cool. Like, again, like back in like 10th grade, you wanted to be a broadcaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're just going and
I'm in it. Like
you're following the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
And you're doing all these amazing like historical things.
It's been a wild run. Like I couldn't have, when I left local, my girlfriend, I was just talking with her before I got here, and then in the last few weeks, her and I had conversations. Her and I worked together at the station in Rochester, and she's going to say wonderful things, right? Like she thinks I'm her future husband, and hopefully that's the case, right? Like, so
right. Naturally
she's going to say good things. So she said to me, honey, you were great on air. And I was like, listen, I was pretty good. Like I could hang it on a sportscast, and I could, with play-by-play stuff, I could really let loose because I could let my personality show, and it's a lot of fun, and it's energy, and I love being at live events. If it's a high school game, I don't care if it's high school volleyball, right? Like it was exciting to those kids. You and I played, right? You were a football star, Friday Night Lights guy. You came and hacked it up with us on a lacrosse field, you know, and we had a ton of fun just chopping it up in those moments. But in those moments at those ages, it was like
the biggest thing there is.
It was the biggest thing there is, right? So I always remembered that, and I always tried to bring that same energy and enthusiasm. And you know, when like a TV station or TV crew shows up, there's like added pressure, and it's the biggest thing in the world.
It's the biggest thing in their lives at that point.
100%. So I always enjoyed that aspect of it, and it was a lot of fun. But what I realized was I needed the leadership side of things. I needed to be in control more, right? Like, you remember me in the huddle. I was the shortest guy, but I was always the loudest. I was always the energy guy. I was always the glue guy. I was never the best, right? But I was always the hardest worker and trying to grind for every shift that I got.
Yeah.
The whole 9 yards, right? Like, that's always been me. I'm not the most talented guy, but I will outwork you. And there's no doubt in my mind about that. I sat and ideated and sent off emails this morning for like 4 hours, right? And it's July 4th. So it's just the way I'm wired. It's just the way I operate. And I think it harkens back to watching my mom do it for all these years, and then being from where we are from. You have that mentality. You have that drive.
That's been my success in the shit I do.
Yeah.
I just outwork everybody.
Yeah.
She's always like, Danielle's always like, I don't get it, and I'm just like,
We're just cut differently. It's just it really is. Like I can't explain it. Like
it's a benefit to coming to a shitty place where there's not many opportunities.
Yeah.
And you have to work your ass up for like 50 grand. And that's like making it. And that's not a knock on anybody here.
No. It's an incredible place to grow up because you learn those lessons. You see what it's like. You understand the value of $1, right? So you don't take anything for granted. And you understand to enjoy the successes when they happen. I'll always remember the 03 championship at Syracuse, right? It's just like, you just remember those things. Like I was 100%. Just harking back to Mello and all the rest of that. Know where I was and when they beat Kansas, all the rest of stuff, because it was like the biggest thing this town has had in however many years. But like you remember those moments, you remember where you come from, and it helps drive every day, right? You can just harken back to, all right, it's better than, having to lay bricks here, having to do whatever. Like, I'm so great. My grandfather came over to this country in the 1910s from Italy and worked in Pittsburgh on, the railroads. I'm very cognizant of that, right? Like, I'm very cognizant of what he sacrificed to give my grandfather and his brother a better life, and I'm cognizant of what my mother has done and sacrificed to give me a better life. So it's all part of it. And I think part of it is that Italian culture, right? Like, it's not to get too like Italian with things, but like it is part of that culture.
I was just having pasta for my birthday.
100%, right? Like it's on July 4th, right? Yeah. So I had a cannoli before I came over here. So and tremendous heartburn followed, but so it's just all part of that. You understand the culture that you grow up in, you understand all of that stuff, and it helps shape, everything I do.
That's so cool. And so tell me about Mike Pereira, talking about Italians.
He's actually Portuguese, believe it or not.
No shit.
Pereira's it sounds like a very Italian last name, right? And he constantly gets mistaken for this, but he's actually Portuguese.
All right. Well, I am mistaken. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, Mike.
You are not the first, and you won't be the last.
So him and Uggs, that is.
Yes. This is
I am puzzled. What is the connection with that?
So, a television studio is well air conditioned constantly because the equipment can't get too hot.
Okay.
All right. The cameras, as we were literally just talking before this about your equipment. We need some better air conditioning here, I guess, is the idea, right? Like, but yes, truly, the temperatures are kept so low in a television studio that Mike will get cold. And so his solution to this was to buy Uggs so that he would not get cold. That's the connection. So during Sundays when Mike is on TV and you don't see him, chances are Mike is wearing Uggs.
So why do the ESPN guys all wear like white sneakers with suits?
I think it's a comfortable thing at this point because it's certainly not for fashion, and they didn't do that decades ago.
They didn't. Yeah, it's weird to me every time.
It's very
still
odd.
Weird to me.
It is. It definitely is. I mean,
they've now made it acceptable to wear white Air Force Ones with suits, though.
Yes.
So people can go out and wear that.
It's wild to me. A good friend of mine that got married recently wore Air Force Ones instead of like shoes.
Dress shoes, yeah.
It was just like, okay. I mean, it looked good. It was a sharp look.
It's become acceptable.
But it has become acceptable, which is, I think, very strange.
That is really weird.
It's very odd. I think we're old school in that regard. We're a nice pair of dress shoes. Like,
yeah.
They're not meant to be comfortable.
And
but
I'm rocking Iversons if you want to put them
exactly.
on camera.
And I was nice enough to take my shoes off. I'd just like to note that for the record.
No, I literally went and put these on. It's a birthday gift. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to have a chance to show these off.
Yeah, you need to.
Normally, I'm going for Jordans on my birthday. I wanted Iversons this year.
I mean, hey, listen,
that was my high school.
Throw it back. I remember.
Yeah.
I remember. I was never cool enough to rock those. That's what I remember.
I used to have the all whites of these, and like when I played ball, because I couldn't afford the Jordans back then.
Yeah.
So that would actually be the ones that I got. So tell me, kind of going back to high school.
Yeah.
Went to Awful Al's the other day. I just got it twisted that way. Yeah.
There we go.
All right. So I went to Awful Al's the other day.
Oh man, what a bar!
Dude, it's one of the best bars I've ever been to.
What a bar!
And if anybody comes to Syracuse, New York, you're looking for a cool like cocktail bar, mixology bar, Awful Al's. Jeremy Wicks' cousin is the bartender.
No kidding.
And he remembers. He's talking about Master Pole's party, and he's talking about me and Joe English on like the beer pong table.
Yeah.
Dude, I was like, wow, man, I forgot about that. That's crazy. But that leads me to asking you about the Beer Olympics.
Okay.
What is that? And tell me about that.
Yeah. So I recently accepted the executive producer position of Bussin' With The Boys. And
congrats on a side note.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm super excited. This is...
And if Taylor and Will hear this, you guys rock.
I'll try to share with them whenever this drops. I'll try to share with them. So I had been in talks with these guys for like a month. The interview process was really awesome. Like, it was just great conversations at every stop. Every time I heard more about not only Will and Taylor, but the show, their ideas, what they had done and where they wanted to go, I just got more and more excited because it really had combined a lot of the skills that I had acquired over the years. Like, being on air, you understand how shows are supposed to flow and what producers put you in the right position. So I've always tried to do that as a producer. Put my guys in the best position possible. Give
me an example of somebody not doing that, somebody doing that. You don't have to say names.
Yeah. No, I think for a lot of it, it's you have to really prepare and understand the situation, right? So if you're going to go in and do a particular interview or you're going to have a particular subject come in, it's having that background. It's giving them that extra nugget. It's making sure that person, that interviewer, feels comfortable in this environment, right? So
the producer does the background research.
Yeah, the job really... When I had been a producer full time on specific shows, my job was a lot of research, right? It's understanding what's timely. It's understanding what will get the conversation going, right? And so when it comes to sports, like, I knew at Fox when I put the Cowboys on, we were going to have better ratings. It's just the way it went, right? If I had Mike and Dean tweet out, we're going to talk about this Dak Prescott interception or whatever it was, or this defensive pass interference as it pertains to the Cowboys, I knew my ratings would be higher. So it's just being cognizant of all these different storylines, and really your job as the producer is to organize everything. So I'm organizing the technical staff. I'm organizing the talent. I'm making sure that the rundowns are tight and that we've got all the elements, that everything that we would need to succeed as a group is available to us. So that's really where the leadership comes in.
And then a bad producer just
doesn't do those things, right? Like may just grab convenient plays as opposed to ones that would be really interesting and create interesting conversation. Or for the gambling stuff, it's just really lazy stuff like, well, what games are available today? What can we bet on today? That's what we'll talk about. It's boring, right? The reason the NFL is the number one is people love to watch it, and people love to talk about it in the offseason. The NFL's done a really good job of creating different events in the offseason to attract you, right? The draft is one of them, and guess what? You can bet on it. So if you can bet on it, we're going to talk about it on a gambling network. So like all those different things. And so as I got talking with Will and Taylor and then the folks at Barstool about this opportunity, what I kept going back to was leadership, organization, and then the ability to help produce some new shows that they want to do. So we're going to, in the fall, launch a new gambling show that'll be dedicated to the NFL. We're going to retweak our current show, Bet the Bus, and that'll be more college focused.
Bet the Bus. I like that.
So I didn't come up with the name. I think that was Will. It's a great name, right? So it's all part of that branding that I now have to be concerned about as an executive producer. So it goes above just my role now as a executive producer is not the day-to-day, but it's the week-to-week. It's the month-to-month. It's making sure that all the pieces are moving in the right direction. Will and Taylor know where to be. You know, my guys that have been doing this with Will and Taylor, I'm the newest guy. I'm the seventh member of this team. How do I work into what they already do?
So who are the other members on the team? Like, what are the, you have, again, names, but what do they do?
So JP is one of our main shooters and producers. Jack is our head of social. He's our main social guy. And Garrett is our Swiss Army knife, right? Like his title is creative coordinator, but he really handles so many different things, from graphics to live events, all these different connections that we have to do because our show is unique. It's not just the podcast. We're going out and doing live events that most people never see unless you're there. And then Mitch is our one of the newer members. He's an associate producer, and Mitch is really good at learning, right? Like he's got to be good at trying to figure out what the next move is. And so he's been one of the things I've really enjoyed about Mitch is he's eager to learn. And I'll be honest with you, as the new guy coming in, I couldn't be the bull in the china shop. It just wouldn't work because there's an established culture there, because they know kind of what they're already doing. And I'm really lucky. There's a foundation there, right? So the guys that have been there have built this tremendous foundation.
Good leadership is not exerting leadership unless absolutely necessary.
Right.
I've learned that in business. Like as a leader in business, it's like good leadership is actually almost always hands off until absolutely necessary.
100%.
So
you let them operate and you give them that wiggle room because decisions will be made and some may be wrong, but you're hoping that a majority are correct, right? And so again, as I examined what we had here, it was a tremendous foundation that was built. We just need to build the framing, put the siding around this thing, and plop the roof on, and we're headed to the moon. And so that's really the mentality is allow these guys to operate. JP is one of the best shooters with vlogs out there, right? He knows how to engage Will. He knows how to engage Taylor to get that moment out of them that we need on the back end when we're editing and putting this thing together. And he's got that creative eye. Jack understands the social landscape. He really understands our demographic, right? Everyone's got a different demo. And Jack really has done a tremendous job of identifying it and then speaking to it. And for Garrett is... he's such a leader in this space in the regard of whatever is asked of him, he will do, right? And that to me is a good leadership quality.
It's huge.
But he just loves to be that glue guy in the locker room. Like I said, for Mitch, he's the new guy, doesn't have as much experience, but how can he learn? What can he do to be a little bit better? How can he get more experience? So I'm really fortunate in the fact that this team that I didn't assemble was already here and has already elevated that product. My role is to come in and help them tweak it, right? Like, what can I take from Fox? What can I take from DraftKings? bring it here to Bussin, and then help them elevate that product. That's really my role. And to get these guys organized, right? Like this, Will and Taylor started this thing on a bus, and it's still on the bus, right? We still operate from the bus. That's the studio. But it has evolved. It's merch. It's live shows. It's a vlog that, we try to pump out on a weekly basis. And now it's expanding into that gambling space to do more shows.
Okay, that makes sense. So what? So I kind of sidetracked you on that. What's the
beer Olympics? Sorry, we got to get back to that.
No. I was interested in that. in the like production stuff and.
So again, with Beer Olympics, we'll go back to organization. The Beer Olympics happened because Taylor used to have the Titans offensive line over in the offseason as kind of a morale building, team building type thing where they would do a couple, the college beer games, right? Like everyone would do. You're playing flip cup, you're playing beer pong, beer ball, doing some chugs, whatever it may be to, rally the guys. And last year, a bunch of the Titans came over and then Will participated. And now this year, what they did was they evolved it to Will and Taylor were on a team. A couple of members of the Titans were there. David Bakhtiari was there and brought one of his rookie tight ends. George Kittle participated with DeForest Buckner.
Dude, he seems like he's super fun.
George is a hilarious guy. He's just got a great energy about him. And DeForest is like as down to earth as possible. And he's this mammoth human being, right? Like just couldn't be a nicer guy. They were awesome. And then
wild, though. We were talking about it off camera. Like when you're around those people, you're like, oh, there's just different.
It's insane.
There's different types of human beings.
Like I am, spoiler, 5'7", not that big, right? And like 150 pounds. And you get around these guys that are 6'5", 6'6", and 300 pounds, and I just wonder how we are the same species.
Right.
Like literally, we went to tight end U. My third day of work was we went to tight end U. And these are some of the biggest guys in the NFL. And I'm going, we are not the same species. They are from a different planet, or I am, and, just haven't developed enough. Like, it's incredible to be around these athletes. You get the sense of, like, I always thought I could play college lacrosse, and I did it for 1 year. And then you get around guys that play D1, and you're like, oh, wait, that's different. Like, that's just it's a different sport. They're, a couple of our guys played football, and they played, D2 level, and then they get around these NFL players. And even some of the Vanderbilt guys were out at tight end U, and you just see the difference between a solid SEC D1 player and NFL guys. It's even more different, which is wild. At any rate, sorry, Beer Olympics. So these NFL guys out, and this year they invited a bunch of country stars, and a couple of the comedians that came out were like Bert Kreischer and Shane Gillis. And this guy who I love now, Uncle Laser, who I was unfamiliar with his work prior to this, and then realized he's like a stand-up comedian. And so Uncle Laser was the funniest guy there. So basically what we did was we did a bunch of drinking games over like an 8-hour span.
So, wait, so you drank with Bert Kreischer?
I did not. My job was to corral them. I was asked several times, am I drinking, or, have you had a beer? And I guess I didn't have a single beer at Beer Olympics. In fact, we can talk about this later, but I haven't had a sip of alcohol in 5 years.
Oh, no shit.
I never had a problem with it, right? But it was just...
Yeah, you never got out of control.
I never was an issue or anything like that. What became an issue for me was the hangovers, right? No matter how much I drank. I remember the last time I drank was with some friends in Rochester, and I literally had like 2 beers and woke up and had a hangover the next day, and it lasted like all day. And after that, I was like, I'm good.
Can't even do 2 beers.
I just couldn't even do 2 beers at that point. It was such a weakling. I was like, no, I'm done. That's it. I just... At that point, I stick to my cigars, and I know that's my vice, and that's that.
So you'll be surprised to hear this.
Yeah.
I gave up alcohol this year.
Did you really? Congratulations, my man.
Wasn't having a problem with it or anything like that. I gave it up as an offering to God, really, for like to elevate.
Yeah.
'Cause I feel like I have so many things about to happen.
Yeah.
And in particular with my mushroom church. So, spoiler alert, I cannabis and mushrooms all the time.
Yeah.
Literally, I go out of my way to do mushrooms. My goal is to do mushrooms 48 hero doses this year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I was like, anything that's not going to help me elevate, and alcohol is a depressant, so it's pulling me down,
Yeah.
I'll give up for the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I gave that up for the
That's
year.
awesome, dude.
But one of my goals is to get hammered drunk with Bert Kreischer.
Yeah. And he lived up to the billing, right?
Yeah.
Bert was incredible. And it was really just away from the games. And I think the main goal for Will and Taylor out of this, my goal was to make sure the production was great, right? I needed everything to go smoothly. I needed to make sure our guys captured all the content and that we can put this, vlog together so that people can see it and enjoy it. Will and Taylor's goal was everyone needs to have a good time, right? Like Taylor even texted me afterwards, like, "Hey, did you have fun?" And Taylor's not going to know, and hopefully he'll listen and hear this, but like, I didn't have a single beer. Like, I didn't drink. I didn't find it necessary, but I had a blast, right? Because it's
the energy.
You're around all these great people. It's that competition, and I still am a competitive bastard at the end of the day. I want to win in all things, right? But it was the energy, it was the excitement, and it was the laughs. And that's it really, when you hearken back to anyone that listens to Bussin' and anyone that's been around these guys and knows, the core of what we do at Bussin' is the locker room energy, right? Like, to this day, I still remember we used to drink cucumber soda before games in lacrosse, right? I went back to Brooklyn Pickle, no free shout-outs, and had a cucumber soda recently. And it was just like I was back in town in Syracuse. We went and got a sandwich, and I had to get it. So, like, it's just you remember these little things, and it just sparks all these memories.
The celery soda, right?
Was it celery? I thought it was cucumber. Whatever it was. Maybe it was celery.
Because it was green.
Celery.
It was,
That's right. It was celery.
It was disgusting.
It was awful, right? Like, it was awful. But it was one of those things that we did as a team.
We did it before every game.
We did it as a group. Have a sip, pass on to the next guy. Hope nobody was breaking out that week or whatever, right? Like, it was just one of those things. And I still remember those things. So, like, that's the core of what Bussin' does. And that really was what Beer Olympics was, is to get all the guys together, have some competition, shit talk a little bit. And it was an incredible, like, 8-hour event. Now, it was insane on my 9th day of work with these guys to be wrangling around comedians, and Shane Gillis was there, and it was like, I need you to pop over and do this confession cam, and they're like, what the hell is this? And it was, we set up this reality style, real worlds type thing where folks could go in and, give the real story. And what was hilarious is we had Hardy and his wife compete, and Hardy, before the event started, had DM'd Bert Kreischer. All right, and this will come out in the vlog, so you'll be able to see this. He had DM'd him, said, dude, I'm such a huge fan. I can't wait to meet you and have a beer with you at Beer Olympics. And Bert, rather than respond, just double tapped and liked. And then Hardy went over the top, and it started this whole feud, and they just started laughing, and it was hilarious. So the shit-talking, the beef was starting, like, weeks in advance. That's how much, like, it's wild. Everyone's very busy, right? Like, you're crazy with your own life. Can you imagine just taking a Tuesday and just getting all of your friends together that are in different towns in different parts of the country that all have something going on, just getting them together and spending the entire day getting drunk playing games? I mean, that's really what it was. So that's the fun.
I try to do it every Saturday with mushrooms.
Yeah.
I do my best.
Yeah.
My secret has been not growing up yet.
Yeah,
succeeding in business.
There you go. I mean, everyone's got the secret sauce, right?
And the key is doing that. Dude, that's so cool. So I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you give the MVP to from the Beer Olympics? I don't necessarily care about. Oh shit, my collar was up the whole time.
Boy, the MVP. Two guys kind of jump to, I think two guys came to the forefront, and one's going to sound like I'm pandering because he's my boss, but Taylor for sure. Taylor had the fastest chug of the day. They had to do 3-beer chug, and he did it in like 3-something seconds. It was insane. It was absolutely insane. And then Taylor was phenomenal at beer pong and kept them alive in what was the longest games. They played 2 of the longest games of beer pong I've ever seen in my life. So Taylor was one, and then I think George Kittle was the other, because George was like happy-go-lucky, but when it came down to the competition part, you saw that NFL player like pop out, where it's a bit of shit-talking, and he's just a little bit better than you are, and you can't really explain it with George, but he's just this quintessential tight end, and when you watch him play football, he's gonna hit you a little harder, he's gonna run a little faster, he's gonna make the catch in the big moment, and it was the same thing at Beer Olympics. He was gonna make the shot, He would make the flip cup when necessary. He was a solid chugger, right? Like, it was just all these things started to come out. So I think George was probably the MVP.
All right, and then who had the worst showing?
Uncle Laser by far. But to Uncle Laser's credit, he showed up with 2 bags of wine, red and white, and had been drinking since about 9:30 that morning. The Beer Olympics didn't start until about 12:30.
Okay, so he showed up.
He showed up already probably half in the bag.
I like that.
Yeah, and there was controversy, right? Like there were really good controversial moments that we can show in this vlog that we're putting together right now that'll be really entertaining for people to watch because, naturally as you get people having a few beers, you're going to think, oh, you moved that cup or that you were backhanding on that flip cup or that beer ball didn't actually graze the can. So like,
did you as the sober guy, did you get called in to
officiate?
Hey.
Break it up? No. So luckily, and again, this goes back to
I would be terrified for you getting
my God,
between just two behemoths.
Again, 5'7", 150 pounds
versus 300
versus like 300. Yeah, exactly.
All pro tight end.
Taylor's 6'7" and is slimmed down, looks great, but still, I'm not going to stop him. I'm not going to stop. Will was a freaking linebacker, right? Like he was there to take running backs' heads off. I'm not getting in the way of that, for God's sakes. Like you played linebacker, I'm not going to stop you. To this day, I'm not going to stop you, Luke.
This is NFL guy.
This is NFL guy who has been drinking, by the way. It's like at that point, all bets are off. But no, it was. I go back to the relationship I've got with Mike and Dean, and I called Dean up, like literally a week before the event, and just said, hey, we're doing this beer Olympics thing. Do you want to come in for it? Do you want to come, help kind of establish the rules and all the rest of the stuff? Like Taylor did a great job of leading up to the event, getting everything organized.
Dude, if you ever need a volunteer or something like that.
Yeah, you're not the only one that said that to me, Luke.
Yeah.
By the way, like I've had a lot of people now say, hey, next year I'm available, right? Like I can come in next year. So, which is great. I will keep it in mind for sure, right? As we evolve it.
Yeah, for sure.
100%. So Taylor got all the rules ahead of time of what he wanted because it was his house, right? So he wanted the house rules thing, which I thought was a really cool angle of the whole thing. So we had all these rules set out, and Dean was like, yeah, I'm down with it. Like, this seems like a great event. I'd love to come in. So I've got, and this is, again, wild to me. I'm a kid from upstate New York who, again, you can look at my resume and look at it one way like it's incredible, or you can look at it that I've lucked into a lot of things, and I've been really lucky in a lot of things. I don't want to get that wrong.
Preparation plus hard work equals
100%, right? Like you got to put yourself in those positions over and over and over again. And it's crazy to me that I can call a former VP of officiating and he'll come and do this beer Olympics for me, right? Like this guy's used to the NFL and he's still the head of officials for the XFL. A very serious individual who I can call and just say, will you come and do this stupid little thing for me?
Which is amazing that they had the head official.
Yes. And so Dean flew down and was the head official. And
did he wear a referee's outfit?
We had him and what's great about Dean is, and he'll tell you this, he's the only guy, I think to this day, who was never an on-the-field official, but still was able to rise to the level of being the head of officials for the NFL. He's had a wild ride too. So I think he and I are simpatico in that regard a little bit, where it's just like we're probably not supposed to be here, but we're here. So
enjoying the ride,
right?
Not working.
100%. And Dean's a sharp guy too. So
that's
like
awesome that they had Dean Blandino refereeing.
Dean Blandino was the referee for this, and that was the funniest thing was as the competitors showed up, they didn't know that Dean was going to be there, right? And so like all of a sudden you're just hearing like, what the hell is Dean Blandino doing here, like officiating, right? And so. And to Dean's credit, he was super into it. Like I didn't want him to feel awkward. He did, I had him kind of do the intro to the different events because I needed somebody. Will and Taylor, as you'll see, really were focused on being competitors.
So that was you that got Dean in there.
I got Dean in there.
So you got to be in good graces with.
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful, right? And so it was funny because Will and Taylor were giving Dean shit the whole time, right? Because that's who they are. They're competitors at the end of the day. And it's just hilarious, that relationship to me. And afterwards, both Will and Taylor texted me and said separately and just said, hey, I hope Dean had a good time. And I had messaged Dean prior to that, just like, thank you so much, for coming, for your friendship, everything. Like, it was awesome. And Dean was like, this was great. I can't wait to do it next year, right? Like, so he was all about it. He loved being in that moment. And what you won't know about Dean is like his incredible personality, because you just see him as this official guy on TV that'll come in and tell you that Des Bryant didn't make the catch, right? Like that was, and he was the head of officials that made that determination for the NFL.
Fuck you, Dean.
Right. As a Cowboys fan, I'm sure you're thrilled with that. But he's been a part of those major controversial moments, right? And he doesn't take himself too serious. That's the best part about Dean. He's done stand-up comedy on a couple of occasions.
Yeah, is he funny?
I didn't see it, so I don't know. But I know
Sounds like what a friend would say if he's not funny.
Right, yeah. But I will say, in the moments like behind the scenes at Fox Sports, he'll get on you, right? And he'll find those moments and those ways to just pick at you. And like, oh wow, look, we got fireworks going here. Quite the setup you guys
July
have
4th,
here.
baby, July 4th.
You know, I got really sick in February before COVID hit, and so Dean would and I had this terrible flu. I was in Vegas, had this terrible flu, and Dean will tell you that I was the first COVID patient. So like he'll rip you for those things, which is hilarious to me.
I had Michael Goldberg on one of my podcasts.
Okay.
He was the CEO of a chain at like award-winning hospitals with COVID.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, he was telling me like all this
Crazy stuff.
Yeah, it was really interesting to hear his.
Yeah.
Dude, this podcast has been awesome, and I haven't even been doing it for that long, and haven't had that many guests.
But
just like again, I've known you forever, but now hearing these stories that I wouldn't naturally get to hear.
And we would only get these if we were out at a bar, right? Like if we went to Awful Al's and we're hanging out again, you know. So like that's
and there'd be so much distractions and alcohol,
the music and all the rest of it. Yeah.
So like podcasts, I got into this honestly to learn, and I've talked about it on the show a bunch of times. Like I told you, like I felt called to do it from a higher source.
Sure.
And I'm doing it, but like for me, it's super cool to like just have people on and to learn and like get to choose my guests and like put friends on and stuff like that. So it's super interesting. But shout out to Sarah Rathbun, who told me that you were going to be in town, or Moochie told me you were going to be in town.
Yeah.
We were talking about all that. And I know you're going back tomorrow, but Wisniewski's in a band apparently that's doing really well.
It's incredible, by the way.
Yeah. It's what would you guys call yourselves? The news team.
We were like the BL news team or something like that when we were in high school, and it was all based on Anchorman. Like
everything that was
was based on Anchorman.
Was based on Anchorman.
I think he fancies himself, or did at the time, like Will Ferrell, which makes complete sense.
I don't think I know.
Okay, all right, that's fair enough then.
But it's just funny, like the whole news team. Well, not the whole news team. Sorry, Moochie, but a lot of you guys have gone.
Moochie always wanted to be, but really, it was the core of it was Matt, Nick, Jeff Szynski, and myself. Those were the four.
Right. Yeah.
Which were like the core of this thing that I swear.
What was Master Pole's role?
He was the reporter.
I wanted to have him on tomorrow, but he's still in Maine.
Is he? Okay.
Our buddy Nick Mashpole's got a super successful cannabis farm in Maine.
Wild. I mean, just wild that he has that too, by the way.
It's wild. Him, Billy, and Beef.
Which is crazy. And I am super happy for all their success, right? Because they are like just genuinely good people, which is awesome.
That love weed.
That love weed.
In ways more than most people can love weed.
But what that should tell you is follow your passion.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and
Let's
that's
go back to Alchemist.
I went back to, so like I had a 6-month hiatus that really it was part of the journey that I'll look at and go, okay, that was a crucial 6 months where I had left the content space and went to work for a live events experience company, and I was doing marketing for them. And it was the toughest 6 months I've had in a long time. But what it did was solidify my passion for the content space. So I now understand, okay, this is the lane I'm meant to be in. This is the role I need to be in. This is where I'll be successful. And I was incredibly lucky and feel incredibly lucky to have landed in this spot with, Bussin' With The Boys.
Dude, if you don't mind, I'll probably ask you more stuff off camera, but like, I'm going to call you at some point and like ask you kind of questions on how to gauge my thing. This is super cool, man. Like, this has been so helpful just listening on this.
Yeah. Anywhere I can help, my man.
Dude, this is so awesome. And then, I guess for anybody that's listening, what would you say? I mean, I think I know what you're going to say, but what would you say that your secret ingredient to your success or your luck? So in the boxing gym I used to go to when I was going to be the boxer on your show, it was luck. It was a mathematical formula. It was luck equals opportunity plus preparation.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah.
But what would you say the key to your luck is, or the key to your success? Let's not say luck. Let's say success. And what would you suggest to anybody out there listening?
That's a really good question. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, my ego will tell you I am just more talented, right? Like, and there's part of me that believes it. And part of me needs to believe it to operate the way I operate and to be in the rooms that I'm going to be in, right?
Right.
But the other part of me that is the humble will say, man, it's been you were lucky to get the call from Fox. I was lucky to, I filled in producing Mike and Dean's digital show one time. I was lucky to be able to do that the bosses thought of me to do that. And it was luck that it worked out, because after one show, Mike Pereira went to my boss and said, I want him to produce me from now on. That's my new producer. So like part of it is, yeah, it's a skill and it's a drive. I think for me, the one constant in my life has been hard work.
I was going to say, you must have came in super prepared if Mike Pereira after one time.
Yeah. Well, I was terrified, right? So the show would air on Mondays, and I would gather all of the clips, and I would gather all the plays and everything I would need on Sundays. So, I mean, as you think about the Fox Sports studio, I'm sitting in the officiating cube with Mike and Dean. And these are the biggest guys that I had been able to produce up unto that point.
Huge names in the industry.
Massive names. And they couldn't be nicer guys. But I was terrified, right? There were 5... The way the windows work for Fox on the West Coast, it's a 10 and a 1 window, or your 1 and 4 windows out here. But because it's all regionally based, it just depends on the week for how many games Fox will have versus how many CBS will have, right? That first week, Fox that I did it, Fox had 5 games cooking in the first window, in that 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock window. And things were buzzing around constantly. They had done like 3 or 4 hits on air before I even got settled in the chair. And so I'm supposed to be watching
what does that mean?
So there's controversy happening, controversial plays that the producers are bringing them on the air for. Or what you don't see is a lot of times a producer will say, hey, we've got a close call. I don't have time to bring you on, but what are you seeing, Mike? What are you seeing, Dean? And so they're going back through plays and then are telling the color guy, telling the producer, whoever, they've got links right to the truck or right to the talent's ears for them to say, okay, it is a hold, it is a catch, it is pass interference, or it's not, right? And so a lot of that stuff you just don't see, and they are a well-oiled machine, and it is cooking constantly. So I walked in there, and I was already nervous as hell, which is a good thing, right? Like nerves either...
It's a healthy level of respect.
100%, right? And it's that pressure is either going to break you or it's going to make you, right? And so there have been a lot of times where it has broken me, and I had to figure out another way around. And in this instance, it just made me, and I was able to cope and, find a groove and figure out what I needed to do because I knew this was my one opportunity to do it. So I sat down that Sunday, was panicked, 5 games, things are flying around. I am incredibly nervous, have half an idea of what I'm doing, and somehow faked my way into doing it. I've never asked this of Mike, but I don't know why he went to the bosses and suddenly wanted me to produce. I have no clue, but I know
you got to ask him that one.
Eventually I need to, because I know my boss went to me and said, "Listen, he asked for you to do this," and I was like blown away. I mean, this guy's gonna have a gold jacket one day. He's gonna be in the Hall of Fame, right? Not only just because he was the head of officials for a number of years, but he created this. He and with some Fox executives created this position of, a head official or a former official sitting in helping the audience understand what the play was and why it could be called a certain way. So yeah, I mean, the respect I have for both Mike and Dean is boundless. I mean, it's these guys are the tops in my mind.
So basically, to boil that down, stay ready so you don't got to get ready.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and I think a lot of it's hard work, right? Like I had spent a year in between my on-air stuff at the local spot and Fox trying to figure out that next step. So you talk about that podcast I had. We didn't have a tremendous following, right? But the people that followed and loved the show still will ask me about it to this day.
Right, but because you treated it so sacred and because you put the work in, when the opportunity came up.
It's just amazing. We got a fireworks show here, by the way.
It's confirmation.
Yeah.
So because you treated that so sacred and you worked so hard, that when the opportunity came, you were ready.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I think people should really take away from this is like, again, Bond knew what he wanted in 10th grade, but he didn't just sit there and wishing it.
Right.
He went after it aggressively and then still wished it and still had positive vibes. And I think that's where like a lot of the either spiritual or religious people get lost is like, it's only part of the equation.
Sure.
You can't just like say prayers and then like do nothing.
And then it happens. That's not how it works.
Drake has a line that I love. It's like, I'm the type to say a prayer and go get what I just prayed for.
Right.
And
but what that should show you is you need the hard work.
You need the hard work.
Right. The prayer is, and I'm not incredibly spiritual or religious. I would say I'm more spiritual than religious.
Yeah, same.
But I think for me, it's that prayer is whatever you want to call it, however you want to define it. It's you being able to verbalize what it is you want and where it is you want to go, right? And I haven't known every path. Like it's the last 6 years has been wild for me. It's been New York to LA, LA to Vegas, Vegas to Charlotte to Nashville, right? Like, and I wouldn't have told you I would lived in any of these places and done half of these things by now, right? Like I looked back recently. I just sort of was pontificating a little bit with, as I tend to do with my girlfriend, I guess. God bless her. She's incredibly.
She move with you to Nashville?
She is not yet. So she eventually will. Right now, she is under contract with a local television station. She's an incredibly gifted anchor and has done amazing things in local news. And again, she is, I think, in that point where she's looking around the industry going, what's the right move for me next? So, and I think I've had an incredible journey, but I look at her and she's born and raised in the Philippines, moves over here after her mother dies. Her mother dies when she's 17 years old. That's that was her parent growing up. She didn't know her father until much later on. And she moves to an entirely different country. This is not her native language. And she is now paid to communicate in that language and be in front of the camera. I mean, I look at her and I'm like in awe of things, right? And like, again, we can sit here and look at my resume and go, that's incredibly impressive. And I'm like, yeah, but I can't imagine moving to Italy and then suddenly becoming an on-air broadcaster having to communicate, like in an entirely different language that is not a native one.
Well, I would throw that into the part of the reason why I'm so successful too is it's necessary to have a healthy level of ego, but it's necessary to have a healthy level of humility.
100%.
And you've always had humility.
100%.
That's something that I've recently developed. I didn't always have humility, I don't think, but I definitely have developed it, and it's a huge aspect.
It was part of your journey though, right? Like you had to start off with the ego, and I didn't start off with the ego. I didn't have the same confidence in high school you did. I didn't have that same confidence even through college, right? So I had to develop the confidence part. I've had the humility, right? Like so it's just understanding what tools you were given right at the start. Like everyone's dealt a hand.
Self-awareness is huge.
100%.
Knowing what you have.
100%. And for me, I've had to kind of develop that ego and understand you need to walk tall. You need to hold your head up high. You need to walk into rooms confident because then people will respect it. They see it, and fellow people that are confident will respect and see those others that walk tall and understand it too. Now, is that line very fine between cocky and confident? It's cliche, but I think it's 100% true, right? Like you can see the folks that are incredibly cocky. You can also see folks that walk that line of, I know what I'm doing. I've been here before. I can do it. It doesn't matter whether it's in a business conference room. It doesn't matter if it's at Wendy's, right? If you're the top guy there or gal, you have to walk tall, right? And it'll help you get into other rooms.
100%. You have to, but my nana used to instill it upon me. And that's part of the reason why I had an ego when I was younger. Was I used to be told, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody will believe in you.
Yeah.
And if I didn't say I was the best at something, I would get reprimanded.
Yeah.
And then through my years and lessons life gave me, it was like, oh shit, okay, cool. There's a way to do it and manage and balance. And then the other really important thing by that too is, I'm sure you can attest to this as well, is when you do carry yourself with that way, but then you give other people the spotlight or you listen to them, they step up. Mm-hmm. But if you're somebody that shows no confidence, you give them the spotlight or the whatever, they might step into it super nervous.
Well, I think that's part of leadership, right? Like you being able to shine light on someone else shows your leadership, and it offers them the opportunity to then grab the moment and seize it, right? Like, and I've had a couple of opportunities, and the guy that was my associate producer that became a producer at DraftKings, who now produces Michael and Michael's podcast and produces Brent, I helped him along the way, right? Like it wasn't that I grabbed him and showed him everything, right? Like I didn't dump knowledge into him and all of a sudden he's this great producer out of left field. He had showed an interest. He had showed enthusiasm. He was intelligent, right? And he showed these qualities and became a hard worker. And it was like, okay, what is he lacking? Opportunity. So let me give an opportunity to him. Let him produce a show. Let me then show it to the bosses and say, okay, here's what he can do. we're not utilizing this chip enough. And what I think enough people don't realize is in that moment, I look good. Because
100%.
the bosses now have said, oh, Steve's able to identify talent and he's able to develop it.
And that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize either, is that actually gives you more power. It's when you give power away.
100%. 100%.
And it shows others, okay, I can trust this guy.
For me in that moment, it was, again, I go back to the leadership thing. I've always wanted to be a leader. Since I was in the middle of that huddle on the lacrosse field, not really understanding, but just trying to hype everyone up. I knew in that moment we needed the excitement, right? We needed to galvanize around one message and then go out and do what we would do. I knew in those moments, like I had done leadership courses in high school and leadership programs around Syracuse. So I knew, I've always known I wanted to be a leader. I just didn't have the platform to do it. And you kind of have to carve it out and develop it along the way and wait for your opportunity. And when I got it, it was, okay, now how can I, again, show that spotlight? How can I provide that platform to someone else? Because in my mind, if that person succeeds and I have identified that person and I've identified that trait, it then shows my ability to think at a different level.
That's beautiful. That's, yo, man, I'm super proud of you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Likewise.
Thank you.
Likewise.
I think that the fireworks are going off. We're gonna take that as a cue. But it's a blessing to have Steve Bond on, the executive producer of Bussin With The Boys, amongst many other things. Next time I'm in Nashville, I'll hit you up.
Please do. Thank you for having me on, my man. This was
man.
a tremendous pleasure and an honor.
Yeah, what a random but awesome.
100%.
I knew we were gonna have some kind of cool interviews. We have a couple coming up too. But
yeah.
When I heard you in town, I was like, dude, I got to get Bond on.
Well, I'm grateful that you would think of me for this, for sure.
For sure, man. For sure. So, again, Free Game Productions, free, unrestricted, uncontrolled, out of the prison game. Something that has a set start and end. Life advice. Free Game Productions, and thanks for being on here, man.
Thank you.
And thank you to Danielle for being our producer today. Her
100%.
first time.
You did wonderful.